Good evening, everyone. Let's make a start. My name's Patrick Hall, the Mayor of the City of Canning, and I declare this evening's meeting open. It's Tuesday, the 19th of October 2021, and a slightly late start. It's about 2 minutes past 6. I wanted to start by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet this evening, and pay our respects to elders both past and present. May I ask those present, as we always do, to turn off electronic devices, including mobile phones, iPads, etc., for the duration of the meeting, as these devices may certainly interfere with our audio equipment. This meeting is being live streamed on the city's website, and I do feel sorry for the hundreds of thousands of people that are live streaming tonight from their homes. I understand some of you might be doing that by candlelight, and the power is out here in the room, as I mentioned earlier. We're on auxiliary power, so I'm certain that we'll get through the meeting fine. By being present at this meeting, you also realise, as members of the public, consent to the possibility that their voices are being live streamed to the public. The remainder of the disclaimer is actually on screen. As far as attendances go, apologies, there are none tonight, but Councillor Sweeney would like to make a brief announcement, and Councillor, if you don't mind, I'll just throw the floor to you. Councillor Craig Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to take 2 minutes of the Council's time. I'd just like to make a statement just in relation to my absence last night, everyone, and why I didn't attend the swearing-in ceremony. There's been quite a few rumours circulating around the last 24 hours, and there's no need, there's no big secret, but first I would like to just take a moment to congratulate personally the newly elected councillors that we have with us this evening. I wasn't here last night to do it in person, so I apologise for that, but congratulations. And I award you for your commitment in local government, and I wish you well in all your future endeavours. And also, while I'm on that, just to also congratulate the incumbents on getting re-elected again, Sarah and Amanda. Well done. And also to Ben on becoming our Deputy Mayor. Very well deserved, Ben. You've always been really enthusiastic in Bannister, so I hope that goes across other wards like Nicholson. And I'll be looking forward to that very much, so thanks, Ben. But look, the reason I wasn't here last night, very simply, is that yesterday I received an email from the council, or from the city, saying that last night's event was moved to tonight. So I'm not sure, it was a personal email, I'm not sure what happened there. I was down south at the time, so I just drove my car around and went back down south. So it wasn't my fault, I apologise for that. And I must say I was probably more disappointed than anyone else this morning when I realised that I'd missed this event. So I can see how my absence may have been interpreted. It certainly wasn't a good look. But I can assure everyone that it was due to no other reason, and importantly, was of no fault of my own. So we move on, and thank you for that time, Mr Mayor.
No problem at all. Thanks very much, Councillor Sweeney, and no doubt your apologies have been accepted unreservedly, so thank you very much. We move to item 2.2, approved leave of absence. There are none. Disclosures of interest. Mr CEO, disclosures of interest.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have two disclosures tonight. We have a disclosure from yourself in regard to item PT 00121, a declaration of impartiality, and a disclosure from Councillor Bain in regard to EN 02121, also a disclosure of impartiality.
Thank you. Announcements by the presiding member. I'll only reiterate for those that obviously weren't tuned into last night's council meeting, just to welcome the new council, Councillor Steve Parkinson, Councillor Hardeep Singh and Councillor Paul Tuchek, who were successfully elected. Also to make mention of Councillor Sarah Sabiri and Councillor Amanda Spencer-Teo, who were emphatically returned to their seat here on council in the wards of Beeloo and also at Bannister. And of course to acknowledge Councillor Ben Kunza, who is now the Deputy Mayor after being successfully elected to that position last night. Congratulations to Ben. And to put on the public record my sincere acknowledgement of the commitment and the service provided this committee to this council and the community by the outgoing mayors being Yasso Ponaturai, Councillor Graham Barry and also Councillor Tim Porter, who served 2 terms on council and was one of the original council members elected in 2015 after the council returned from administration. So I think it'd be remiss of me not to put on the public record how much I'm sure the community acknowledges and appreciates their service. So thank you to those members. Reports of delegates without discussion. Does any elected member wish to present a delegate report this evening? None, thank you. Question time for the public. Response to previous questions taken on notice. There are none. Question time for the public. I open question time now at, by my recollection, it's 6:06 p.m. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. For recording purposes, please state your name and address and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy ADO2, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City's administration will be called upon in the order in which registrations were received. Written questions will always precede verbal questions. The City has received a number of questions tonight. I understand Miss Judy Potter has sent in a written question. I'll ask Anita Primo to please read the question, if you wouldn't mind, Acting Director, and also a response.
So the question is the City of Canning or residents responsible for mowing verges if the City, what is the mowing schedule? That was the first question, and the answer is the City supports residents to mow their adjacent verge to assist with ensuring the neighbourhood is kept tidy. However, the mowing of verges can be requested to be completed by the City on an as-needed basis by contacting the City through the customer service online or via the phones. The City maintains these verges from time to time depending on the site conditions as per the Management of Street Verges policy. The second question that received was, what is the City's policy on vacant lot management of vacant lots? And the response to that one is, if the City owned, if the block is owned by the City, then it will be managed by the City. If it's privately owned, then the community safety team will assess the risk for fire hazards annually and request the property owner maintain it. And the final question was in relation to the Bentley 360 parklands. What is the City's involvement in the Bentley parklands, and in what sense of the word with the Bentley 360 parklands located in Bentley, WA, including obligations and lease arrangements? The City's response to that is the Bentley 360 area is managed by the Department of Communities.
Thank you, Acting Director. We've got questions here from Marnie Aldridge. Ms Aldridge, you'd like to come forward, introduce yourself please to the meeting, provide your name and address and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, Mr Mayor, Councillors, CEO Kane, Directors and those in the public gallery. My name is Marnie Aldridge and I live at Minota Avenue in Shelley. Before last month's OCM, I submitted a petition to ask for council that states that we, being the citizens of the City of Canning, hereby petition that the council will take note of the wishes of the citizens insofar that we request that the role and the title of mayor is not used to promote or endorse council candidates in the upcoming council elections. The petition tonight clearly requests the council only notes the wishes. At no time is it requested that there's any action to be undertaken or changing laws.
Mrs Aldridge, please.
My question is, if the petition was received under 4.7.3 Section 3A, but not referred to the CEO for action by council tonight, how could the council noting the wishes only of the citizens be unlawful or illegal?
CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Ms Aldridge, for your question. The issue is not so much whether the actions are contained in receiving a petition is unlawful. The issue is what the substance of the petition is, whether it be lawful or not. The Local Government Act provides for and defines the role specifically of the Mayor. It is not open to Council to otherwise define or add or remove to any action that's not contained in the Local Government Act. doing so would be an unlawful act.
Your second question, Mrs Aldridge?
Okay, just to clarify then.
You
I'm
don't
not-
have a... This will be your second question if you
Well,
ask a
my
question.
second question is, all we are asking for is to note the wishes. We have a lot of petitions that go out to say we'd like to have more police.
Just your question, Mrs
The question
Aldridge?
is, how is noting the wishes only? That's all that is. It is a substantial motion to actually note the wishes
Your
only.
question?
That is the question.
What was your question?
The question is, how is noting the wishes incorrect or wrong or illegal? It all is noting the wishes. We could wish for more police. It may not happen, but we can at least note the wishes of the citizens.
CEO, are you able to answer that
Thank
briefly?
you. I'll rephrase what I've just said. The issue is whether the action contained in the request itself is unlawful. It would be like saying, we note that the petitioners asked for the speed limit in the whole of the city be increased to 100 kilometres an hour. That would be in contravention of the Road Traffic Act. Simply noting such behaviour, which is unlawful in its own right, is something that any good government wouldn't do. It would simply say that type of action is unlawful and therefore it seeks to either accept or reject it, in this case to reject it.
Your final question, Mrs Aldridge?
Okay. If the current form of the petition is nothing more than a formal communication between its citizens and council, noting the wishes, how is this not setting a dangerous precedent?
CEO, are we setting a dangerous precedent?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It would be remiss of any organisation, particularly administration, to advise whether the action is in itself unlawful. So the precedent here is what has been requested, and it's the first time in my time in local government where a petition has come forward where the essence of the petition seeks council to do something which is, in the essence of it, unlawful. Just as if a child came up and said, look, Mum, Dad, I'd like to drink, and they're underage, a parent wouldn't allow the child to drink, even though the parent had received that type of activity. So in this case, as I said, similar to an action where a request might be there to council, we would like to increase all the speed limits so they don't breach the law. Our job is to advise council whether the action itself is lawful. The action itself in seeking to add or constrain the duties of the mayor in itself is unlawful. And whether you note it, whether you reject it or others, but we are saying simply it's unlawful and therefore the action we are recommending to reject.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Mrs
very much.
Aldridge. Mr Aldridge?
Richard Aldridge, 5 Minota Avenue. Good evening, councillors and CEO, Mr Mayor. Can the CEO please confirm that the action in the petition is in fact for council to note the wishes of its citizens? That is the action requested by the petition.
CEO, did you understand that?
Yes, Mr Mayor, and as I'll say again, the action might be to note, but the action is to note that the request is fundamentally unlawful. So you're asking council, we want the council to note we want to do something which is unlawful.
Your second question, Mr Aldridge?
Can the CEO please confirm that the Mayor or any other elected member have not been authorised to use any local government resources whatsoever for the purpose of persuading electors to vote in a particular way during the council elections?
CEO?
Mr Mayor, I can't confirm what or any action that any individual elected member has decided to do or otherwise. The Local Government Act and the Rules of Conduct specify actions which an elected member cannot do, but I do not know about the actions of individuals that may be sitting here at the council tonight.
Your final question, Mr Aldridge?
Sorry, I'll rephrase if that's possible.
That's not possible. This will be your third and
I'll
final
ask the same
question,
question again though, but I'll emphasise.
It's not the same question again, it's another question. You just asked a question and you've had it answered, so ask your final question, Mr Aldridge, and then sit down.
My request.
Final question?
My question was, has any elected member been authorised? It's the authorisation I'm after. Have they been authorised to use any local government resources?
Mr CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The city does not authorise and cannot authorise the use of resources that are the responsibility of the city to an elected member.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr CEO.
Thank you. Thank you, Governance. Are there any further questions from the public gallery before we close public question time? Thank you. We'll close public question time now. The time is 6:16 p.m. We move on to the confirmation of minutes. Confirmation of minutes, the recommendation is on the board. It also appears on page 2 of tonight's agenda. Can I ask for a mover from the floor, please? Councillor Bain, thank you, and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Kunza, thank you very much. Councillors will put that matter to the vote.
Councillor Singh, I don't have your voters yet. The motion to confirm the OCM minutes from September has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, governance. We move to item 8 of tonight's agenda, the receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. Just in relation to my earlier impartiality disclosure, it's in relation to this item. The item clearly relates to the role of the Mayor. Despite me being the Mayor, I'll carry out my decision-making responsibilities, obviously ethically and impartially. That's the declaration. This is a PT 001 of 21, the petition received from Mrs Marnie Aldridge of Monota Avenue in Shelley, the prayer of which appears on screen, I believe. Have we got that on screen? The prayer of which appears on screen. The officers have made a recommendation. I'll be moving from the chair that council receives the petition in accordance with clause 4.73A of the City of Canning Standing Orders Local Law 2015. Can I have a seconder from the floor, please? Deputy Mayor Kunza, thank you. We put the matter to the vote. There's no discussion on it. We'll be receiving the petition. That's the proposal.
How can you do what you're saying, Mr Mayor? This is a proposal from
It's a recommendation, but
don't we have to...
I can put a motion from the chair, and until it's actually moved and seconded, if it had been moved and seconded as the current recommendation, then I would need to foreshadow an alternative motion, which would be contrary. The intent would be different to the original motion. I haven't done that. I've moved a motion which is contrary to it. Some time ago, you might remember when we had the matter in relation to the CEO's contract, we had a recommendation. Before that recommendation was put to council, we had a councillor actually move a different recommendation. So it can be done as long as it's not moved and seconded as it is. So that's the recommendation. It's been now moved from the chair, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, and we vote on it. There's no discussion on petitions.
No, Mr Mayor, I'm not disagreeing with the thing, because I know where I'll vote for, and it'll be that. I don't like, and I'm going to voice my objection to the process. This is wrong. You're circumventing a thing that's put up here. It should be voted on, and it should be, there's no A and B on here to go to, like that other one that you were talking about. This should either be voted on or an amendment put through or
it complies with the standing orders. I accept.
Where is that in standing orders?
I accept and note your rejection of it, but...
Where is it in standing orders that you can do this?
CEO? CEO, I'll just ask Ms Cornish from Governance to actually read the appropriate section to the clause, the standing orders.
Thank you, Mayor. I refer to Standing Orders Clause 4.73, which, in response to a petition presented to it, the Council may resolve A, the petition be received, B, that the petition be rejected, C, that the petition be received and a report prepared for the Council, or D, that the petition be received and referred to the CEO for action.
Yes, I saw that and I understand that, but there's something up there that's this is your recommendation to reject the position as on 4.73B.
That's the recommendation, though. So
I'm just going on procedure. I don't like the circumventing of that, what's up there.
you've made your point, but governance are now confirming. We had a meeting with the CEO.
No.
It's in accordance with the standing orders, councillor, so...
Well, I'll object to saying that it is not in accordance with standing orders at all. That is not the interpretation of
Okay.
me and the standing orders, but
All right.
have that noted. But
Okay,
thank
it has
you,
been
Mr.
noticed on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, the recommendation in front of you, the motion is that the council receives the petition in accordance with clause 4.73A of the City of Canning Standing Orders Local Law of 2015. The matter has been... Councillor Kunz, you have a...
I was just
seconded by
going to say
Councillor
before we vote, should that be changed to A so that council is aware?
Kunz. Should be
on the
changed
screen.
to A. It should be that council receives the petition. Yes, 4.7A, that's what I read to the meeting. 4.73 in brackets, A in brackets. .73 in brackets, A in brackets of the City of Canning Standing Orders Local Law 2015. That's right. Councillors, the matters on the screen with matters in relation to petitions. Under the standing orders, there's no discussion on these matters. We're simply receiving the petition. I'll put it to the vote.
The motion that the petition be received has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour. Thank you.
Thank you, Governance. So we move to item 8.2, presentations. There are none this evening. At item 8.3, deputations. Deputation's been approved for Mr Stephen Johnston regarding item EN 024 of 21, being the draft significant tree register and the adoption of ET 545 recognition and protection of significant trees policy. Mr Johnson, would you like to come forward? You are already. Thank you. Just state your name, introduce yourself to the meeting, and please go ahead. You've got up to 10 minutes, Stephen. Thank you.
Stephen Johnston, Delphi Court, Rossmoyne. Mr Mayor, it is hard to overstate the dreadfully low level of tree canopy cover over most of the City of Canning. The figure cited in the Urban Tree Forest Strategy 2 years ago was just 7.6%. which was then and probably still is one of the 3 lowest of the LGAs in the Perth metro area. And without the Canning River Regional Park, it would be significantly lower. I think another poignant way of looking at it is that one of the goals of the city's community strategic plan, Our City, Our Future, which of course is now under half-term review, is to increase our tree canopy from 9%. What the community assumed we already had is actually about the best we can hope for to get in another 18 years' time, and only if the urban forest strategy is implemented successfully. And for that to happen, we are going to need to not just get the projected net increase of 61,500 trees, but also save most of our existing tree cover. As the City's Parks and it was then Place Improvement branch highlighted in August last year, the loss of canopy cover of just a small number of mature verge trees can equate to more than a year's additions under the City's annual street verge planting program. It is therefore critical to the future of this city that Council takes all the practicable measures possible to protect mature trees on public and private land. The 2 motions before you tonight, the proposed amendment to Local Planning Policy LP09 and the draft significant tree register, aim to do just that. The amendment to LP09 is the most important of the 2 only because it has the potential to protect probably the greatest number of trees on private land, or to at least require the landowner to plant a number of semi-mature trees. A stark measure of the success or otherwise of this amendment will be if we see the end of the now standard practice of demolition teams leaving behind bare bomb sites at developments. My impression from listening to last week's briefing meeting was that you were generally comfortable with this much needed initiative, and I urge you to support it tonight. Clearly, however, there was a bit of discomfort about the proposed significant tree register. We had the spectre raised of people knocking down trees on their properties for fear they might go on the register, despite the fact that the owner's prior approval will be required, and Councillor Holland described it as an incredible imposition on property owners. Hopefully there's been a bit of reflection with the additional information that Mr Johnston's office provided during the past week, but as a resident Canning ratepayer, I think we need to get a couple of things into perspective. Firstly, this is not some wacko new initiative from left field. Significant tree registers have been part of the mainstream of tree protection in Australia for more than 30 years. They were first introduced by the National Trusts. In the Perth metro area, they were introduced 20 years ago by the councils of Vincent and Victoria Park, and since then, 10 more metropolitan councils have established them, and all but 3 of the council registers in Perth include trees on private property. And in fact, it'll soon be 2 because the City of Bayswater is in the process of extending its tree register to private property. The second important thing to remember is that the significant trees must have exceptional characteristics. The register will only contain a very, very small proportion of the city's trees and an even smaller proportion of trees on private property. Your average jacaranda, Bradford pear or Chinese tallow wood on the front lawn is just not going to make the cut. In this respect, I think it's instructive to look at the significant tree registers of some of the other Perth councils. Down at Mandurah, they take a pretty hardline approach. Owner permission is not required for inclusion on the register and the council can overrule owner objections. Imagine if that was being proposed here. Still, only 25 trees of private land have been recorded. Bassendean takes the same hardline approach as Mandurah, but only has tree preservations on 26 trees on private land. Town of Vincent has recorded 25 sites in 20 years and only 6 of them on private property. At Freo, the register only includes trees on private land, but just 7 sites have been included since it was introduced nearly 3 years ago. And finally at Vic Park, since June 2001, 198 sites registered, some 250 trees, and 7 of the 198 sites and 24 of the trees are on private land. Now, okay, while 4 of those 5 LGAs are much, much smaller than Canning, even relative to their smaller size, these are very small numbers indeed. And it's worth noting that all those LGAs have significant higher levels of tree canopy than Canning, so they've got more to choose from. But clearly, the evidence that is available to us elsewhere in Perth does not support the fears that were abounding around the chamber last week that a significant tree register in Canning is going to be impacting a whole lot of Canning property owners. It simply is not. So let's have a look at some of the other concerns. Councillor Sweeney raised unbudgeted arboricultural costs. Now, yeah, presumably, as he suggested, there would be an initial rise in those costs as the first 93 sites identified by the city were assessed. But as I've already cited, the evidence from elsewhere is that Canning, particularly with its depauperate level of tree cover, is hardly going to be flooded with subsequent nominations. And not all the nominations anyway will be assessed as meeting the criteria. I don't agree with Councillor Holland's description last week of this as an incredible imposition on private property owners. But I do think that the city has to recognise, like some Perth councils have, that when it places a privately owned tree onto a public register to protect that tree for the good of the city, it has a responsibility to assist the property owner with the costs of periodic pruning of what could be quite large mature trees. But again, this is not going to blow the park's budget. Given the minimal number of trees involved, this would likely be a small, occasional addition relative to the city's already current considerable arboricultural responsibilities for trees on public land. There is understandably also some concern as to how subsequent owners will know if a tree is on the register. The register will have to be easily accessible on the city's website, and there should be, as suggested in your additional briefing for tonight's meeting, a robust readable tag placed on the tree that records its significance. But at the end of the day, like every law, every planning regulation that has ever been issued by this council and probably ever will be, there will have to be a significant reliance on the goodwill and good sense of the people of this city to do the right thing. In this case, for potential purchasers to be informed about the registered tree. Okay, if you still have some concerns about the proposal in its current form, notwithstanding the additional information you've received over the past week, please do not reject it. We are in catch-up mode and we have a desultory level of tree cover and we must protect it as much as we can. And I'm sure that you can work through the issues as other councils have done with park staff and make whatever adjustments are necessary so we have a very, very good tree register. We've got a lot of examples to look at. And there are options. For example, if you're not comfortable with third-party nomination of trees on private property, Councillor Holland's concerns about consulting the overseas property owner or a family trust within 21 days, you could restrict the nominations to property owners only, as the town as Vincent has done for the past 20 years. But whatever you decide on the detail, please do not lose sight of the fundamental need for a significant tree register in Canning to cover public and private property as another small practicable measure to help us fulfil the tree canopy target that this council unanimously endorsed on the 19th of November 2019. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming along, Mr Johnson. Thank you. At item 5, applications for leave of absence. There are none this evening. Questions by members of which notice has been given without discussion. There are none. At item 11, items brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery. Considering the size of the public gallery and the interest in the matter, I will bring forward EN 024 of 21. That is the draft significant tree register and adoption of ET 545 recognition and protection of significant trees. That matter will be brought forward shortly. At item 12, reports of committee meetings, there are none this evening. So we will move to reports, the first of those being the one I just mentioned, EN 024 of 21, the title of that report being Draft Significant Tree Register and Adoption of ET 545 Recognition and Protection of Significant Trees. That matter is on page 16 of tonight's agenda. It's on page 16. I've also got it on, apologies, it's on page 170 of the published agenda. So page 170, and the responsible officer is Mrs Anita Amprino, the Acting Director of Environment. Councillors, can I have a mover for that item from the floor? A mover, Councillor Spencer-Teo, and a seconder, Deputy Mayor Councillor Kunza. Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Stephen Johnson. Always learn a lot from your very wise counsel. I ask my fellow councillors to support this policy. I agree that we are not quite there yet, but we need to start with something. So I ask that you support it. However, I would like to move an amendment that I have sent through to governance earlier.
Yes, governance, have you got an amendment?
I can do that while I'm here. And that is to...
just wait for a moment. So we'll need a seconder before that, before you can speak to it. So, yeah, we'll just get that up on screen. Is that the amendment, sorry, in front of us? First of all, Councillor Spencer-Teo, is that the amendment you put and are you happy with the wording of that?
Yes, that's the one.
You are. You'll need a seconder for the amendment. Deputy Mayor Kunza. Councillor Spencer-Teo, I'll ask you to speak to the amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the reason why I wanted to...
just for the sake of the meeting, I might just... I'm going to struggle to read that. Can I get you just to enlarge the font, or... How are we going there? Oh, good. Requests a review to be conducted within 12 months after the adoption of the significant tree register and a report to be presented to Council to consider any potential minor amendments that may be necessary. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, go ahead.
That's okay. So as Mr Johnson explained, several other local governments have a significant tree register. I've only briefly been able to have a chance to look at those, and I for one would like to spend a lot more time looking at them and comparing them to what we have and what could be done better. But I think time is of the essence with this. We need to get this policy in and out there. Like I said, I would like to probably make some amendments, but I need to understand the consequences, unintended or not, of those amendments. So I think having a policy review in 12 months would give especially me or this council an opportunity to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Kunze, did you want to speak? We're only speaking to the amendment.
First, apologise, I didn't move the motion, but to our new councillors, that the first thing that we debate is an amendment. But no, I think it makes sense. I mean, the reality is there's a difference between theory and reality, and so whilst staff have put forward a policy position or a register, different local governments do it slightly different, and I think it's pragmatic to actually, if we endorse this policy, to actually consider within 12 months whether there needs to be any minor changes. I think some of the issues that were raised last week have merit in terms of what happens if something happens, and there's always unintended consequences to anything we do. And so to actually include within the officer recommendation or the council motion that we have a review within 12 months will give council the opportunity to see whether in reality it goes as we expect or whether there's some other minor issues that we might need to deal with. But I think it will give peace of mind to anyone considering any issues that might eventuate from this policy position. But so I support this, and I think council should as well.
Councillor, does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? We're only speaking to the amendment, just to the amendment. Thanks, councillors. That being the case, then, if no one is speaking against the amendment, we might just put that to the vote. So we're voting simply on adopting the amendment or attaching the amendment to the motion in front of you. We'll put the matter to the vote.
The amendment to item EN-024-21 has been carried. 10 in favour, 1 voting against. Councillor Sweeney voting against the amendment.
Thank you, councillors. The amendment has been adopted by council. It now becomes the substantive motion before you. We had Councillor Spencer Teo has moved the substantive motion. Deputy Mayor Ben Kunze has seconded the matter. Councillor Spencer Teo, I'll ask you to speak to the motion, and then I'll move it to Councillor Deputy Mayor.
I'm pretty sure I already did before I moved the amendment, so I'm happy that if Councillor Kunze would like to speak to it.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Likewise, I'll just say through you to Stephen Johnson, fantastic deputation. He went through a lot of the pertinent points that there are, and just the significance. I can't overstate the significance of this policy and the tree register that we're considering tonight. As I said before, a number of issues were raised last week that had merit. I think the subsequent information that's been provided will give a lot of ease to councillors over potential private property rights issues or anything like that. But I can't overstate how important it is as part of our urban forest strategy that we protect mature trees within the City of Canning. We are trying to make a far better environment within the City of Canning. Unfortunately, most of the environment that used to exist on the Swan Coastal Plain has already been cleared, and we need to do all we can. And whilst the City of Canning is going to be planting 61,500 trees over many years, it increases the level of tree canopy cover from something around 7% to 9%. It's the amount of work that needs to be done to improve our environment is considerable. And so the fact that there's significant trees across the city that have been around for 100 years, it's important that we provide that added level of protection. Now, I just want to go through some of the issues on this. I mean, private property rights, I 100% I'm someone that believes significantly into private property rights. However, as we've been briefed, I mean, there's 9 trees so far on private land that have been identified over 3 properties. So this is, when you think about the thousands and thousands of trees are in the city of Canning, private property is just a tiny bit of this, of what we're considering here tonight. But it's not about identifying every single mature tree in the city of Canning. It's about finding those significant ones, those ones that have unbelievable value, that it would be a considerable loss if they were to be removed. And it's, if anyone, I know Councillor Sweeney last week mentioned that the financial issues, but to think about the fact with our urban forest strategy, I mean, we were going to spend nearly 30 million. Now it's about 15 million due to changes in the strategy to try to improve our environment, to spend a few $1,000s actually assessing all our trees and working and providing structural assessments and making sure that they're structurally sound, and actually providing that added bit of protection to make sure that trees that are that significant are protected. I think that's a worthy investment. I mean, we're spending millions of dollars hoping that one day these trees become that. I find the financial imposition, it's not an argument given that council has unanimously endorsed a strategy to improve our environment over time. But I want to focus, I mean, this is about providing extra protection to trees on public land, on City of Canning land and Crown land. Now, I want to use an example of somewhere near where I grew up, and that's the Canning Arts Centre land just across the road from the Riverton Forum. Now, that's a parcel of land that has been identified for quite some time of trying to find a use for it, whether it be a commercial or a public good for it. But on the eastern side of that property, there's 40 marri trees. Now, I've looked at those trees since I was little. They're important foraging habitat for many local animals, including black cockatoos. And whenever we talk about that piece of land, I would just be beside myself if those trees were ever cleared. This is actually a mechanism to ensure that no council in the future is going to remove those trees. If we decide to build some amazing civic centre on that site,
1 minute.
those trees will be protected. A future council, once they're on this tree policy, on this tree register, would actually have to move a motion and get community consultation to ever do anything to those trees, and to provide that extra bit of protection to ensure that trees across the city of Canning, significant trees, are protected. I think that's worth it. And so that's why I hope that council endorses this. We've already endorsed pumping so much money into improving our environment, and it's so pertinently important that we protect what we have. And so I think we should endorse this, and at some point, if there's any minor issues that need to be resolved, then that can come back to council. But I think this is a big positive step, and as Stephen Johnston said, it's catching up with a number of other local governments. So please endorse this.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the matter? Councillor Sweeney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm all for protecting the trees, and I'm all for our strategy, our urban forest strategy. But what I am against, and why I'm speaking against this policy, is that we do not need a tree register to protect these trees. So I speak strongly against the officer's recommendation. And the points I'd like to make are these. My first point, it's going to come at a great cost to the people. The City of Canning is in a budget deficit. We are in the red, and according to Mr Kane, this is attributed largely to the Canning environment and the number of unfunded projects we have on our books, which we are struggling to pay for. We need to pay off our debt first and not add to it. This is why we have a business plan. Secondly, the City has earmarked at least 93 sites, not trees, but sites, where they have identified trees to register. That's $400 per tree for an arborist report. Thirdly, what is the community going to get in return? An Excel spreadsheet listing the tree as significant. It all seems too meaningless. Fourthly, there is also uncertainty for the owners of private property. Council tree registers are not recognised or treated in the same way as heritage listed properties. So there is confusion for property owners when buying or selling property. In the last week, I have contacted several councils and spoken with everyone from greenkeepers, horticulturists and arborists, and they all say, don't do it. They say you can protect the trees without the costly register. And there are several reasons for this, and this is what they tell me. The structure for the significant tree register is so complex, it is impossible to administrate. Ratepayers wishing to sell their property are confused if their significant tree has to be listed on the sale documents or not. Is there any legislative requirement for purchasers to sign off and acknowledge the property they are about to buy has council registered a significant tree? I was also provided with examples where one council has been waiting for months to chop down a significant tree which is dead, and they can't because of the drawn-out approval processes, including another costly arborist report. Another council explained that they had a tree that they wanted to treat for white ants some months ago and couldn't because of the restrictive policy. The tree is located on the verge outside a resident's home, and now the tree is totally infested, dying and unsafe. And the council still hasn't had the tree approved for removal due to the complicated processes. Another council has had a huge, significant tree with a massive branch overhanging the roof of a retirement village and have been waiting months just to prune this tree. And because of the convoluted processes having to be signed off by multiple government agencies, this still has not occurred. Councillors, you should be fully aware of all the complexities associated with a significant tree register. And I would urge you not to be like sheep and don't just agree on something just because the council next door is doing it. We can still protect our trees and we can still adhere to our strategies, our urban forest strategies, but we do not need to put up with and include an expensive, significant tree register to do this. So I urge everyone to vote against this officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeney. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Sarah Sabiri.
I'll be voting for this motion, including amendment. I mean, where do we start talking about the value of trees, the economic, environmental, the health, but put them aside. I mean, just to reject a policy because we're not sure how we want to deal with the issues doesn't make sense. I think it's important to accept a policy and have something in place. And it's not just about private land, this policy, it's also about public land. So I think we should accept it, and in 1 year time when it comes back, we can discuss it again, or if we're not happy with it, we can move an amendment to the policy and change something, or even ask for it to be rejected. So I think it's really important to accept, to have a policy. If you're not happy with what's in it, we can work together and change it, an amendment, and make it work for everyone. But just to reject it altogether, I think that's not a good call. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak against the matter? Councillor Holland.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'm going to speak against it. I've got still quite a lot of issues with this here, and some of it is against, we're going to want this tree retention and register. But one of the other council, one of the nomination or the recommendations from administration to council OCMs ago was to knock down all the trees in Agent Court Park. Some of them we just planted, some of them that were significant, but it was actually a recommendation to knock them down to put up a building, because the building could not go there where the trees were. Now this is also, it's not just about council land, it's also about private land. It's nothing to do with the urban forest strategy. I've also put some recommendations that we do a urban forest, and I've also put a recommendation on where to do it and how easy it would be done and where we could get the funding from the trees from the Commonwealth Government. Nothing's happened with that yet, but I've already put things through for that. Now if you go here to ones that are on private land, yes, when I brought up about owner overseas or family trust, yes, it is relevant, it's very relevant. And who's pruning? We have a look on the City of South Perth that you gave an example for before, whoever it was. City of South Perth, the person whose property it's on, they're not even allowed to prune their own tree. They're not allowed to do that. So who does prune it? Okay, we'll give them the right to prune. What about the significant tree that's on my property, but it's got overhanging branches on, just for this example, Councillor Jesse Jacobs' property, which is next door. Now, by law, Jesse Jacobs has got the right to lop all those branches and throw them back over the fence to me because it's my tree. He's got that right. So, and part of it's to do it because he's getting all the lease or whatever the reason he wants to lop it, it's going in his pool or whatever. He has got the right to do that because he's not his tree. But there's no mention of what happens here with that. Has he got the right? And what happens if he prunes it too much? Or what happens if he damages it when he prunes it? Or what happens if I have got the right to prune it and I prune it too much? What are we going to send out? The tree police to inspect this? Is that what we've come to now? That the council is actually the tree police? We're going to go out there, we're going to pay $400 odd for $450 per tree. We've got 99 sites or 91 sites or whatever it is. That's sites, as was mentioned by Councillor Sweeney, not trees. So we're going to pay all that and then we're going to put a stamp on it saying this is a significant tree and this is on my property. On council property, do what you like, it's council property, but we cannot dictate, as in Big Brother, what you can do on my property. So if I want to sell it, and you can say, oh, well, it should be registered or whatever with the council, we're going to make it available on the council's website that they go and check. To be quite honest, I can guarantee you now, 95% at least of the population won't be thinking when they go and buy a tree from, go and buy a house, we'll go to my house, oh, I better check to see whether there's a tree on the tree register. That's important. They won't even know about it. And how are they going to find out? It was mentioned that maybe it goes on the title. Well, no, it's not going to go on the title. It will not. What happens if the house looked okay from the outside, but it was actually sick? Have the council got the right to come in and inspect that tree? Have they got the right to come in and inspect the tree when I'm not there? This is draconian. They can't come into my property. I've got the right to say, no, this is my property. You are not allowed in here. To inspect the tree? Right, oh yeah, well, we're going to do it remotely by one of those things that hover around the place. You're not going to be able to tell them whether the tree's good or bad. You've just been told as an example of when white ants are in there. So I've got a significant tree out the front of my house. It's protected infinitum just about. It's full of white ants that come into my house and wreck my supports. This is not our domain here. This is not what council are for. The 3 R's, yeah, we've progressed a little bit further than that, but this is not our domain. The cost to ratepayers could be extensive. How often do we inspect the tree? How often does it go before the register? Or if you have a look at the flowcharts before, has anyone been able to understand those 3 flowcharts? They're nigh on impossible to understand. This is not a function of local government to have a tree register.
30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We are here to serve the community, and this is not serving the community. The recommendation is to adopt it, it's not to advertise it, it's to put it all. Goodness me, George L would have been extremely proud of this. I urge you to consider this. This is not a policy that council should be adopting, and it is not our domain. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Look, I'll just say a few words. I support the recommendation wholeheartedly, including the amendment. And I think a lot of the questions raised by Councillor Holland will be addressed, if need be, when the matter comes back to Council within 12 months for review, because we're not certain how to proceed. Councillor Sabiri's argument was compelling, and I agree with her. And I also agree with Mr Johnson tonight that said it's incumbent on this local government to put in place something tonight to safeguard the very small tree canopy that we have. We know the issues that we've got. Councillor, the new Deputy Mayor has raised the investment of many millions of dollars over the next umpteen years in increasing our tree canopy. The question was posed about, are we now the tree police? Somebody has to be the tree police. And I think that it's going to be local government, regardless of what we may think, that needs to step forward on behalf of its community, who we represent. We need to protect our environment where we feel that we can. And we need to step forward with courage and safeguard and protect and enhance our existing tree canopy, which we know is remarkably low in comparison to many other local governments. So I do agree to a point with Councillor Holland. This may not be perfect, We may find that it needs to be slightly tweaked at some point. I don't think it's going to be an imposition on our ratepayers, and I think that any issues that we have can be surpassed by clever negotiation between the city's officers, who are professionals, and also those residents who may be affected. But I don't see an imposition here, so I speak strongly in favour of it, and I invite anybody else who'd wish to speak to the matter to do so before we put the matter to the vote. Councillor Jacobs.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief. Not supporting this. I've taken a few point notes. I think $400 to go check a tree would be an excellent job, but don't forget who's paying for that. That's the ratepayers. We're in a difficult economic situation. I like less regulation, not more. If you look at page 181, 182, page 133, page 144, complex worm charts. And it would be a bureaucrat's dream to have that. It would just be awesome. You could make a job of that just with those charts. So I think that if we do have a goal to increase canopy, that's okay. But private property is private property, and as Councillor Holland rightly said, that you can refuse access. I believe it's an overreach of local government. If we want to encourage residents, there's other ways, but I don't like this overreach. I lived in a country where they just say do this, do this, do that, and what I like about Australia is you've got rule of law, you've got democratic government, and don't forget we're all elected by the ratepayers. Economically doesn't make sense. Legally, I think this could be appealed in a court. I'm not a legal professional, but that's my personal opinion. And I think it's a vicious overreach. I know the intent might be good, but this is definitely not the mechanism which one should go about it. We can encourage residents to grow trees, we can encourage them, but it's simple to say that they can't even trim the tree, and it's just not, it's gone so above the local government realm that I can't support it. So I'll be saying no tonight. You guys do whatever you feel free to do with that, but I feel that I just need to make my concerns and comments on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd propose to invite Councillor Spencer-Teo to close debate, unless there's somebody that wishes to speak
Can I
against
just ask a question?
Yes, you can, Deputy Mayor.
Just with respect to the costs, the arborist costs, is it not a fact that all these gum trees throughout the city, a number of them are already on a maintenance register and already have arborist assessments conducted regularly, and the fact that these significant trees exist already, many of them would already be having arborist assessments at certain points in time? Just with respect to the financial impositions, the city already assesses gum trees and a lot of these mature trees regularly.
Mr Johnson, could you come forward please and ask that question? Did you hear the question from the Deputy Mayor? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we do. We have the rolling tree audit that aims to assess every tree over a 3-year program. It does go into the detailed structural integrity, looks at its useful life and other characteristics. But the $400 assessment will also include an aerial assessment, so we can actually have an appreciation from what's happening up in the tree, not just from ground level.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Swaney, a question?
Yeah, can I just have a question for Mr Kane? Just going off what Deputy Mayor Kun said. So I just wanted to make sure that the significant tree register, that is not a budgeted item. That's unfunded at the moment. That hasn't been budgeted for.
CEO?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, we don't have, other than what Mr Johnson's already referred to, the budget already includes an allocation for tree inspections. We don't have an allocation specifically for, say, additional inspections. There is obviously some capacity within the existing budget to do that.
So to be clear, Mr Kane, that would be another unfunded strategy project added on to the ones that we already have. Is that correct?
CEO?
Thank you. Not quite correct. It's not a strategy. This is a policy, and therefore it relates to the policy provision. I said, in terms of how much additional capacity Mr Johnston's got within his budget, he might be able to make a comment to that, Mr Mayor.
Mr Johnson.
Through you, Mr Mayor, can I refer Councillor Sweeney to paragraph 46 of the report, where we state that this time will be absorbed by the current FTE allocation to the city, and no increase in salary budget will be requested through the annual budget process. We can also accommodate the arboricultural assessments as required.
So the cost will be accommodated in the current budget. Okay, thank you.
I've also seen that in the last 2 years,
if you've got a
but it hasn't been
question.
that quite comprehensive. So,
Okay, thank you. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the matter before I ask Councillor Spencer Teo to close debate? Thank you. Councillor Spencer Teo, I'll invite you to close debate, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Okay, so I've got a few notes here.
And just to rebut.
Yes.
Yep.
So firstly, with the Agent Court, that was actually an unsolicited bid. So I'm baffled as to why that was used in an example. There was no plans to remove any trees. There was no plans to even presented to us of where a building, if a building was going to go, where it was going to go. Again, what Sarah Sabiri said, we've got a policy in front of us that we asked for. I don't feel rejecting it is a great idea. With the amendment, it allows us to amend it if we're not happy with it. Coming up with all these hypothetical situations, is this really the time to do it when we've got another 12 months to do it? The owners will be nominating these trees. We're not going to have an influx of 1,000 nominations over the next 12 months, 2 years, even 5 years. So let's remember that. I think that's really important. As Deputy Mayor Kunza mentioned, we have an annual tree maintenance schedule. Let's also not forget that every time a resident comes to us asking for their verge tree to be removed, we have to get an arborist report. I think from memory, the arborist report on the 13 lemon-scented gums was around about $3,000 or $5,000. Not once did anybody question the cost of that coming before council. If we're going to adopt that philosophy, do we then say no verge tree is to be removed no matter what the resident requests because of the cost that it's going to cost us? That's just the arborist report. That's not the staff's time. That also doesn't include the cost of the trees being removed. So to me, we are saving money by retaining these trees. If it costs $400 a year to confirm that they are safe, that is money well spent as far as I'm concerned. These are trees that are worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that are irreplaceable. We can plant 50 trees in their place. It's going to take hundreds of years to get that canopy that this significant tree provides. Again, the private land portion of this policy is so minuscule. It was said that we are here to serve the community. Well, this community are asking for us to reduce the heat effect. They're asking for us to save these trees, to plant more trees. That's what the community wants. Our environmental groups are screaming out, we can't keep up. So if we can save one tree to save on costs and time in planting 50, I say let's do it. Again, we've got 12 months if we don't like this. We can bring this back and we can change it. Please, let's not reject this. Let's move forward with it and change it as we go. We've got an opportunity to do it. Let's do it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote. Yes for in agreement and no being against, just for the new councillors. If you make a mistake, let me know. Put the matter to the vote.
Substantive motion is amended. EN 02421 has been carried. 8 in favour, 3 against, with councillors Holland, Jacobs and Sweeney voting against the motion.
Thank you, Governance. We'll resume the normal scheduled agenda. We return to item 13, which is 13.1, the office of the CEO, the responsible officer being Mr. Stephen Kane. The first report is OC 007 of 21, the title being Draft Policy Proposal, Elected Member Superannuation. The officer's recommendation is on screen. Can I have a mover, please, from the floor? I have a mover, please. Deputy Mayor. Seconder. Councillor Spencer Teo. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll speak in favour of the officer recommendation. I'm surprised you didn't move this yourself. I know how much work you've been doing behind the scenes in terms of advocating for this, so I think it's a bit out of kilt that this doesn't already exist. I mean, the comment made that the superannuation system is underpinned by its universality, and yet people in local elected members don't receive it. It doesn't make sense. I mean, Owen Sell from the City of Gosnells just stood down after over 30 years of service to the community, and for some strange reason, the system doesn't take into assist her with her retirement through superannuation. But if she worked for the City of Gosnells, it would as an employee. I just think the arguments made in the policy in the WALGA document is sound, and I think we as a council should support it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Spencer Teo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support this officer recommendation as well, and thank you for your efforts advocating behind the scenes for this. On a personal level, not to make it about me, but having returned to the workforce after having 4 children, my superannuation and or retirement fund is pretty much non-existent. So this would, certainly, help rebuild that again now that I've re-entered the workforce, and I think this is great for anybody in a similar situation to me or who uses this position as their sole source of income. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer Teo. Look, I'll only say I support the position of WALGA on this matter. It's a strange thing, the white papers published in both Victoria and also New South Wales, where superannuation has been adopted there, and also in Queensland, identified the gender pay gap as a real inhibitor for the non-payment of superannuation, and that is because women, more often than men, as Councillor Spencer Teo just raised, it's more often than not that the allowance paid to women returning to local government or in local government is their primary source of income. And what it means is that by not paying superannuation, which is paid to all other Australians, it actually goes towards widening that gender pay gap. And that was a key finding in the white papers published by the state government and also by the local government associations in those states, and was a foundation argument for that matter. It's also a matter of fairness and equity across the sector, and this has now become normal fare. As I said, it has been adopted in also New South Wales, Victoria and also Queensland for those reasons. So I do support the WALGA proposal. I'm hoping that by introducing superannuation to this sector, which will be a very small imposition when you think of what you earn and what the superannuation guarantee would be for each of us as a core council, will help bring younger people and more women into the local government. So this is a recommendation by WALGA. This is their proposal. This is actually the position of our parent, our umbrella organisation. It supports the positions of local government associations and state governments across our nation where it has already been introduced. So I very much hope that we show our progression as a Tier 1 local government and that we actually support this, if for no other reason than to support the right of women to receive superannuation across the sector, and our role as local government members, especially since 80% of us here are men, to support reducing that gender pay gap in our society. So I support it. Does anyone wish to speak against it? Councillor Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I don't support it and don't agree with it. I didn't join this council to take money from people of the City of Canning for a superannuation benefit. I'm not even sure why we're in here talking about this. The first point, we are not full-time employees. Serving on council, I believe, is a privilege, and this is about how we should be giving back and not taking from our community. We are very lucky. We all have daytime jobs as well as our council income. Some people aren't getting super at all because they have lost their jobs because of the pandemic. So for me, I feel like this is double dipping, while some people are getting nothing. And the people that will benefit the most from this decision are the people earning the most money. Isn't that right, Mr Mayor? Instead of being in a council...
Just hold up just 1 second. Councillor Sweeney, I'm not sure how many times I have to actually speak to you about your behaviour in this chamber, but if you think that slinging darts at me across the chamber and singling me out and trying to cause me a detriment by saying, isn't that right, Mr Mayor, you're going to benefit the most from this, I'm not so sure what the insinuation is, but I find it offensive. And under section 7.18, I'd ask you to withdraw that comment. It's offensive to me and it's insulting behaviour. I find I'm asking you to withdraw it. I'm directing you to make a satisfactory apology and then continue.
Well, I really think that you're reading far too much.
I'm not having an argument about this. You either withdraw it and apologise, or I move on to the next speaker and you speak no further.
I will withdraw it so I can move on because I've got several.
I'm asking you to apologise.
Well, I'll apologise.
Then apologise.
Well, I've just apologised.
Thank you. Now move on.
Okay. Instead of being in a council meeting talking about improving playgrounds and community facilities, we're discussing a motion on how we can all line our own pockets. Every time we sit down at this table, we should be thinking about that family whose father has lost his job and mother who is cleaning the toilets at the local school just to pay school fees for the 4 kids just to keep them going to school. I feel there is a real disconnect here. And we've lost our way a little bit. Taking money from people who are our neighbours, parents and grandparents, is not in the job description. That's not the pitch any of us put in our election material. What all of us should be doing is working out ways how to save the community money, reduce the rates. The whole purpose of council is supposed to be about protecting and helping the community. We should be advocating and looking after our friends and neighbours, not shafting them. Secondly, we are in a budget deficit, so this makes no sense to me at all. We just put everyone's rates up, and to try and reduce the debt and justify this, not take the money for ourselves. I didn't sign up for this, councillors, and I urge you all not to be part of something where the money is not returned to the people. We need to work collectively together to put our community first in all our decision making. I'd like to, at the end of my 4 years on council, walk away with a clear conscience knowing I did everything I could to better my community and not leave a legacy for continually squeezing people for their money. If this is approved, then maybe we should look at our own vision statement, and instead of a welcoming and thriving city of Canning, it should be probably changed to milking and fleecing. Closing, councillors, I urge you to do the right thing by your community and don't take more money off them in these times. Do not support this recommendation.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Can I please ask a question? This is not a motion to actually, for the City of Canning, to pay us super, is it? My understanding is that...
We're just seeking to support Walga's position. CEO?
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. For this motion to have any effect, it would require a change of statute. Therefore, the only time it could come into effect is after a statute change, then a subsequent year after that when the Salaries and Allowances Tribunal then made a determination. So even if Council were to support this motion tonight, I suspect it'll be about 2 years off before we would see any change.
Thank you.
And sorry, one more. Even if we were to reject this, if the support of other local governments go ahead, we may not have a choice but to accept the superannuation because it's going to be across the board, isn't it? It's not going to be selected local governments. Is that correct?
CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, you would have to pay the entitlement, though the one thing you have in your armoury is that you have a policy that deals with what rate at which you pay elected members. So if necessary, if you wanted to, you could always adjust down the rates of pay to match the contribution provided for the additional superannuation. The net cost to this is to the city is $60,000 per annum. It would not be considered significant, which is one of the reasons why the administration has made the recommendation.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Jacobs.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'm against this. I think the optics at this time are terrible. We got rid of the clothing allowance for the reason that, one of the reasons I believe was because of COVID. People are really doing it tough. Super is super something that one can contribute to? Yes, sure. Under the ATO this year, you can put up to $27,500 of your own money into your super. So if people want to do that to minimise their tax bill, then that I think is already available. I'm just mindful of, at the time now, the economy's not great, and I don't think this COVID time is finished by any means. And I just can't go in good conscience. I don't do this job for the money. I do this for the passion. My kids still don't understand why during elections I go out door knocking. Like, Dad, what are you doing that for? It's something. And then look, Councillor Sweeney's correct. It's something more than just money, and I don't agree with it. And it's just a principle. Feel free to make a comment on what you like and not like. But a lot of people doing it tough. The optics are terrible, and this will be considered as, this whole council basically will just put our hands in the cookie jar. And look, our pay has gone up significantly. I think up until about 10 years ago it was like $5,000. We're actually a tier one. We are paid, remunerated fairly generously. I think that if you want to put that money into superannuation now, there's nothing stopping you. So that's my opinion, and I'm happy to listen to other councillors. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Hardeep Singh.
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to understand and ask this question to CEO, that has any of the councillors before moved any motion or requested the remuneration for council members to be decreased to minimum in order to save the money to residents? If we are so concerned about superannuation is only 10% of the remuneration we are getting paid. Has anyone tackled the bigger chunk to minimize that anything should be paid to councillors? We are here for the community service. So I believe it might not be legal, but has anyone tried to put forward a motion that nothing should be paid at all?
I think you might find that there was a decision taken early this year in March 2021, which was unanimously adopted by Council, that we accept the maximum allowance available to us under the Act. That was the decision of this Council, and most of those councillors sitting here. CEO Kane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Council did resolve to pay us off the maximum rate. That position was also reiterated when Council adopted its budget this year, which also resolved to pay the fees and charges in accordance with the maximum.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Holland.
Yes, Mr Mayor, yes, I'll be speaking against this. First of all, we're not paid people. To reference that, how much we get paid, we don't get paid a cent. And when you have superannuation, it's supposed to be when you are in the workforce. This is not coming out of retirement and coming back into the workforce. This is not the workforce. You was brought up about Olwen Searle. I know Olwen very well. When she started on Council 30 odd years ago, there was no pay. There was nothing. She did it out of total community service. When I came on Council 6 years ago, I didn't know what the allowances were. I had no idea. I didn't look it up. I put my hand up to come on Council as a community service. That's what I did. I don't see that. Now, the other point that I'd like to make, this is a vote for superannuation. Don't get it wrong. This is the start of the process. It's to go to WALGA. They say, what, we've got that council, this council and all this. We are going to make a submission to the state government, and that will start the ball rolling. Whether it comes in 1 or 2 years, as the CEO Kane said, is totally irrelevant here. This is a vote to whether we want to get superannuation. Whether it's going to go, whether you bring up Victoria, New South Wales, I don't think they're good ones to bring up. They're dominated by political parties, or Queensland. The gender bias, that was brought up coming into here, there is no gender bias in here. We all get exactly the same allowance. We get the same computer allowances or whatever, the sitting allowance and so forth. It's all exactly the same. I came on here to do a community service. That's what I came on here for. Now, as far as did anyone propose to reduce the amount? No, no one did. I actually, while it's a community service, the amount of money that we do get, the allowance that we do, is quite, if you bring it down the amount of reading we do, it's quite insignificant. The hours that we actually put in here, it is quite insignificant, but I can't see how we can possibly go on to going for a superannuation. I think it's double dipping, and the reason why I say that is because the allowance we get now, we can put in the majority of that into superannuation now, and therefore we can reduce our tax. Now, we can do that now, it's legal. And it was told, if you haven't been told that, the new councillors, you should be told, you will get told that. Now we're saying we'll give superannuation on top of that, which is a way, which is at reduced tax rate as well. I can't see that. Now, CEO, and I don't agree with the CEO, sorry CEO, you're saying we can adopt this, we can manage this in the budget. You weren't asked that. That wasn't the question you were asked. This is another thing that's going on against the long-term financial plan that we've adopted, because we're in all sorts of financial mess, and we're going to go and spend more money. Where is it that we're going to adhere to the long-term financial plan which was proposed by administration, and it was said by administration we need to adopt this strictly over the next 3 years, and we'll get to here. And here's another example that we're going to be spending money. Don't get this wrong whatsoever. This is not a retirement thing, it's nothing. You're here, my son, 23-year-old son, could be here. So is that his retirement? This has got nothing to do with retirement. This is how it should be. You're here for a community service and you do that. I don't want to milk any more money. It was exactly right, the amount of people that are struggling out there at the moment, and we're going to give ourselves inherently a pay rise. And that's what we're going to be sending to Walga, and that's what we're going to be sending to the state government. And if Walga comes back, or the state government, and mandates it, then we can't do anything about it anyway. If it's mandated, then that's it. But we can still put in our objection to it at the moment, saying in the economic times that we've got in the city of Canning at the moment, this is not viable, and I personally do not think this is morally sound. I don't agree with it at all. I don't want it. I don't think it's correct financially, economically, and in my opinion, morally. This is should not be here. You should not be here as a source of income. You should be here for your community, not income. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to start that I support this motion, but when this becomes a law and given the option, I'll be the first one to give up and not receive my superannuation. However, it is our responsibility to save when we are weak. For everyone who serves on this council, they are going to get their superannuation when they're old, when they're retired. That's the time they need the maximum support. Right now, we are working, we are young, we can earn, that's not a problem. Superannuation is for those years when you need it most. So if we can do this for all the upcoming councillors, for everyone, we should do it. And it will be nice if someone would like to voluntarily give up for the sake of community. If they believe they have enough for their retirement, they should be given that option. But taking that option away from people who would like to save for their retirement is not a good thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Anyone else wish to speak before I ask the Deputy Mayor to close debate? Deputy Mayor, I'll invite you to close debate, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll just make a few points. With respect to the timing, I don't think we should be looking at the lens of this year or the next year or two, but more so, I mean, for many years to come. This is an issue that has been brought to us. We can't control the timing through WALGA to make a philosophical point of view. I mean, I agree with what Councillor Singh just said. So, I mean, in 1908, the Pension Act came in. At that point in time, the average lifespan in Australia was 63. You had to live to 65 to actually get the pension. So you had to live 2 years past what people were expected to get money. Today, still 65, going up to 67. The average lifespan in Australia is in 83, 84. So in the 1980s, we had the debate about superannuation. Well, we didn't, I wasn't around. But that debate about superannuation and taking the pressure off the Australian government and putting it more into your own hands, that debate was decades ago. I mean, Councillor Holland made the point about how onerous this job is. This role is, how much reading and how much goes into going to events and so forth. I know people in the sector that have gone from full-time employees to part-time employees just because they want to perform the role as an elected member as well as they can. So as Councillor Singh just said, this is about your many years in the future when you don't want to be a dependent on the tax man, and whether or not people performing this role should receive superannuation just like everyone else out there. Now, we're all looking at our lens about whether we've got a full-time job and then have this on it, and don't worry, I'm in a financial position where I can, I mean, this hypothetically, I have a financial position where I can reduce my pay and put it into my superannuation, or put a portion of my council allowance into my superannuation. But as I said, I know people throughout the sector that have reduced from a full-time role to a part-time role just to make sure that they put their council role at front and centre. So the question is, do you think that when they get to retirement they should be penalised for making that decision all those years ago? Because superannuation, it's not a linear curve. The more you do when you're younger, the higher your superannuation when you're older. So if I make the decision today to go to a part-time role because I want to put everything into my council role, that's penalising me when I'm older. And as Councillor Singh just said, we should be thinking about our retirement. So you should not be penalising elected members, and that's why I agree with the Walga position statement. By not providing superannuation, it shouldn't be a detriment. You should actually be trying to get elected members to put their elected member role front and centre. And one way to do that is to pay superannuation. So that's why I believe in supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Let's put the matter to the vote.
Motion OC-00721 has been carried. 7 in favour, 4 against. Councillors voting against the motion: Holland, Jacobs, Parkinson and Sweeney.
Thank you. We move to item 13.2, the responsible officer being Warren Bowe, the Director of Canning Corporate and Commercial. The item is CC 045 of 21, the monthly financial report of September 2021. Can I have a mover, please, for that item? A mover from the floor. Deputy Mayor, thank you. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bain. Deputy Mayor.
I've got nothing to add.
Councillor Bain, have you got anything to add?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. In the absence of anyone speaking against the monthly financial report, Councillor Holland.
Mr Mayor, I'm not speaking against, but I brought it up at the AB the other day that I would have some things on this, and you said that was quite fine. So,
you have questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, it's just a couple. I'm not going to take too long. The one that worried me was that the operating savings were utilised to fund non-current and so forth. And I saw what, I think it was Director Bowe, correct me if I was wrong, where we had the motion to use money from the Land and Building Reserve to go to aged care. And what I'd like is further clarity. Will we be doing something like that again?
Director Bowe.
After all the trouble it caused us last time.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The provision and the description of the reserve enables that internal loan from that reserve to occur. My view would be that Council would be asked to endorse any transfer from reserve prior to that being undertaken in the future.
Thank you.
Would that be any transfer from any reserve to anywhere else?
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, only the Land Building and Development Reserve has the ability to loan to other reserves, so it is only from that reserve that that loan could occur.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Holland? Thank you. Councillors, in the absence of anyone speaking against it, there's no need for Deputy Mayor Kunze to close. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CC-045-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you, councillors. We move to item 13.3, the responsible officer being Mr Graham Bride, the Director of Canning Development. The report is CD 031 of 21, the title of that report being Proposed Amendment to Local Planning Policy LP09, Tree Retention and Planting Development. The officer's recommendation is on screen and appears on page 61 of this evening's agenda. Just a mover for that matter, please. A mover from the floor. Councillor Sabiri, thank you. Councillor Sabiri, a seconder. Councillor Bain, thank you. Councillor Sabiri.
Support the officer recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Bain, have you got anything you'd like to add?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I support the intention of the motion and its advertisement for public comment. Hopefully it works to increase tree canopy cover in the city in concert with the urban forest strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? No? Thank you, councillors. We'll put the matter to the vote.
Motion CD-031-21 carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. We move to CD 032 of 21. The title of the report being Review of Local Planning Policies, LPO1, Residential Development, LPO2, Publication, Consultation of Planning Proposals, LPO4, Exemption from Development Approval, LPO7, Advertising Signs, and LP12, outbuildings and sea containers in residential areas. The recommendation is on page 69 of the officer's report. Can I have a mover for that matter, please? Councillor Sabiri, thank you. A seconder. Councillor Spencer-Teo, thank you. Councillor Sabiri.
Mr Mayor, I do have an amendment. I don't know whether it's appropriate time to introduce that now.
We'll just I've already put the matter to, I've already invited Councillor Sabiri to speak on the matter, so we'll come to you.
Maybe I should have stood up, but I've been having my hand up.
I've missed your hand up. I didn't see it, and I was looking at Councillor Sabiri, so I don't know when it went up.
Well, it's not a major amendment.
That's okay. We'll come back to it in a moment. So we've just got Councillor Sabiri. I'll ask you to speak to it, and then I'll come to Councillor Spencer-Teo, and then we'll put the amendment.
I agree with the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Spencer-Teo.
Me too. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Sweeney, I'll just ask the amendment.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's just in the officer's recommendation at 1C. I'd like LP07 in relation to advertising signs removed.
That would be a foreshadowed alternative motion, because that's completely contrary to the intent of the recommendation. So the recommendation is that we adopt the schedule in front of you, including LP07. If you are wishing to take that out, in my view, that would be contrary to the intent. So that would be a foreshadowed alternate motion. If other councillors felt the same and voted against this proposal, we'll come back to your foreshadowed proposed motion, which would be all of the above minus LP07 advertising signs. So that would be, in my view, a foreshadowed alternate motion. Any other councillor wish to speak to it? Councillor Sabiri?
Just want to ask a question from Councillor Sweeney. Does he want to defer that one, or you just want it to remove it?
Can't defer the part, you'd have to defer the entire item. Councillor Sabiri, thank you.
Can you just explain, sorry Mr Mayor, can you just explain deferring the entire item? What did you mean by that?
So in relation to this matter, so you can always put an amendment to any motion, but if the amendment doesn't enhance the motion in front of you or add to it, if it's actually contrary to the intent, it needs to be a foreshadowed alternate motion under the standing orders. So because you're actually asking us to do something which is contrary to the recommendation, which is completely opposite to what has been proposed, in other words, you want to actually take out one of the items here, we would need to move that as a foreshadowed motion, which is perfectly fine. But what it means is that if the majority of councillors tonight do support the officer's recommendation as it stands, well then obviously your foreshadowed motion wouldn't be presented. If the recommendation was not supported, then we would move to your foreshadowed motion. So what you're proposing is an alternate motion to what has been proposed. Councillor, Deputy Mayor.
May I just ask through you whether there's an actual aspect of the policy that Councillor Sweeney's not happy with and may wish to amend the actual policy?
Councillor Sweeney?
Well, I was
which
just
part
going
of
to
the
ask.
policy?
I was just going to ask for some assistance here, because that is exactly what I was just thinking. I'm just talking in terms, and I had a brief discussion with Dr. Bright last week. You know, I find that part of that policy under LPO 7 is fairly restrictive, and for businesses, right? For businesses, and if there was a way to look at that part of the policy, is there a way we can change, amend, or hear me out on that policy? Because there are some things there with that I need to speak about.
You can propose an amendment to the policy this evening, but I must say the time to be asking for assistance is we're here to make decisions tonight, and we've had the matter was discussed at last week's agenda briefing, and the opportunity has been in front of council for somewhere getting close to probably 2 weeks now, at least probably 10 days, to raise questions and to work through amendments and to provide those amendments tonight. So I'm not sure what you would like. You need to have the policy in front of you and tell us exactly what it is that you would like to amend in the policy. The other thing I can say with this, councillor, though, on that, any councillor at any time can always bring a policy back for review. So we do have a schedule generally with policies, but if the policy was actually passed tonight and adopted by council, there's nothing stopping you from discussing the matter further with the directors, and at some point in the next couple of months bringing the matter back for review, and that would be entirely proper, and that would give you more time and council more time to consider the position you might put. I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but I'm saying that just like Councillor Spencer Teo tonight proposed that a particular matter comes back to council within 12 months, we can certainly do that.
Look, this is the way I see it anyway.
Sorry,
the recommendation
can I just
is
interrupt
only...
you just for a moment? It's just been raised and I should have picked it up. Just to provide a little bit of clarity for you tonight, this is only for us to advertise these. So we're only
you just read my thoughts.
So
I was just going to say that.
It'll come back to us anyway?
Yes, yeah. I just saw that then. So, look, I'm happy, Mr.
You okay with that?
Yep, I'm happy to let it go. It's going to come back anyway.
Thank you. Did anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you. Councillors, we'll put it to the vote. Councillor Sabiri has actually put the motion. Councillor Spencer Teo second. There's been no debate against it. Councillor Sweeney asked a question which he has accepted the answer to, and we'll work back through this when it comes to before council. So we'll put the vote.
Motion CD-032-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. Item 13.4 on tonight's agenda, the responsible officer being Mrs Anita Primo, the Acting Director of Canning Environment. The report is EN 01821, City of Canning Environmental Volunteer Honour Board nominations of 2020. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 120 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover? The mover will be Councillor Bain. The seconder will be Councillor Jacobs. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation and just want to take the opportunity to thank all of the nominees for their exemplary service, dedication, sacrifice, unwavering commitment and outstanding contributions to the City of Canning community and our environment. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jacobs, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, thank you very much, but at the moment I'm a councillor at the moment. We can only have one deputy mayor at the moment.
Sorry. Oh.
Just councillor up there, thanks.
There you go, sorry.
All good. Yeah, thank you. Mirror the comments of Councillor Bain, nothing further to add, thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the matter before we actually put it to the vote? Thank you. Let's put the matter to the vote, councillors.
Motion EN-018-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. The following item is next on the agenda. That is EN 019 of 21. The title of the report being Request for Tender 05 of Bleak 2021 for a pre-qualified panel of suppliers to supply and lay asphalt. The officer's recommendation is on screen. The recommendation also is on page 127 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Jacobs, thank you. A seconder, Councillor Spencer-Teo. Councillor Jacobs?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support this motion.
Councillor Spencer-Teo, anything to add?
As do I. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against the matter before we put it to the vote? Thank you. We'll put the matter to the vote. Thanks. Have a drink.
Motion EN-019-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. The next item is EN021 of 21, request for memorial to John Parker. The officer's recommendation is on screen. The recommendation is also on page 142 of tonight's agenda. And I do have a disclosure of interest from Councillor Bain. Councillor Bain, would you just like to state the disclosure?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a impartiality interest. I'm the City of Canning representative on the Canning River Regional Park Community Advisory Committee. So I'll exit the meeting for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Can I have a mover, please, for that? Councillor Bain, you don't need to leave the... It's not a financial... You don't have a financial interest. You can leave if you want, but the whole idea of being on council here is to make decisions, so you're not required to leave. In fact, it's better for you to... It's actually better for the community if you stay and make the decision. You're only compelled to leave if you've got a financial interest, and it would be improper for you to stay. The fact that you support the memorial to John Parker is probably a good reason for you to stay. Is there a mover in the room? And that can be anybody. Councillor Holland. Councillor Bain, you seconding the motion?
On your advice, I'll stay, Mr Mayor, and second it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holland.
I have not much further to say, Mr Mayor, but yes, I do support the officer's recommendation. I think it's a great thing for Mr Parker to be recognised. I've done a bit of research on him to see how much he's been a great community servant of the City of Canning on a voluntary basis, not getting paid. He's put hours and hours over the years and years. I think this is a good thing to commemorate. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Yes, I reiterate Councillor Holland's messages. Mr Parker was a significant person when it came to the community and working in the local environment in the Canning River Regional Park, and made significant contribution, and this is a fantastic commemoration of his life and efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak against the request for the memorial? Let's put the matter to the vote. Thank you.
Motion EN-021-21 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. EN022 of 21, the report title being Sustainability and Environment Advisory Group, unconfirmed minutes from August 2021. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears, well, sort of on screen. It also appears on page 149 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a mover for that item, please? I'll move it from the chair. A seconder. Councillor Bain. Thank you. I have nothing to add. Councillor Bain.
Nothing further to add, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Councillors, let's put the matter to the vote. Sorry, just having a few technical issues. All good?
Councillor Sweeney, could I please have your vote? Motion EN-022-21 has been carried unanimously at 11 in favour.
Thank you. The next matter, the next item is EN023 of 21. The title of the report being Request 03 of 2021 for supply, 03/2021 for the supply, service and repairs to pumps and associated bore maintenance. Officer's recommendation may appear on screen. And I meant screen, not squeam. It's not, but it's certainly on page 159 of tonight's agenda. Can I have a move? In fact, I might just read it too. Have you all got it in front of you there on your iPads? Just for the public gallery, I'll read it. The officer's recommendation is one, that council accepts the tender submitted by Ace Mark Investments, ATF, the McFadden Trust trading as hydro-equipped pumps as the most advantageous tenderer to form the contract for the supply, service and repair of pumps and associated bore maintenance, and 2, authorises the interim chief executive officer to execute the contract documents. The recommendation, as I said, is on page 159 of tonight's agenda. A mover, please. I'll move it from the chair. Seconder. Deputy Mayor. I have nothing to add. Deputy Mayor. Anyone wish to speak against the matter? We'll put the matter to the vote. We on?
That's what we were going back and forth to see if we've got any heat.
I hope we have.
Motion EN-023-21 is carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. The following item on the agenda has already been dealt with tonight, and that was EN-024 of 21. That was called forward earlier in the meeting and adopted. The next item is 13.5, the responsible officer being Dr. Sarah McQuaid, to my left, to your right, the Director of Canning Community. The item is CO007 of 21. The title of the report being Smart Enabled LED Streetlight Replacement Program, City of Canning. The officer's recommendation is on screen. It also appears on page 186 of tonight's agenda. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Jacobs, I apologise, Councillor, it's going to take a little while for my brain to catch up to my mouth, and Councillor Singh. Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you. I appreciate it, the upgrade, but I'm councillor at the moment, thank you. Yes, with this, I think it's very good. It's an excellent proposal. It saves power, saves environment, saves money, it increases safety. Rarely would those four things intersect. Sometimes you increase safety, you increase costs. This is another example of Canning can use technology to drive savings, and I implore the city to perhaps think of other ways that we could use similar technologies. A few years ago I changed all my lighting over to LED, and I believe there was an initial outlay that was a bit expensive, but the savings have been good, and the lights are brighter. So I think this is, as the Americans say, a no-brainer for us councillors. And the other thing is power is bound to get more expensive. So what the modelling that we've done on this may actually be conservative. And as you know, there's a big meeting going on in the UK in about 2 weeks, Glasgow. And I'm sure that there will be further efforts. So look, this is another benefit of that. You could say you're carbon neutral, or you're helping with that too. So whichever way I look at this, it's good. It's excellent. And regrettably, it does involve $5.8 million of a loan, but we're spending money to save money. And I know sometimes we say that and we don't mean it, but this is I think this is going to be a good decision. And so I'll just keep my comments as brief as possible. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Singh.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to second this motion. I fully support officer's recommendation. This is a smart investment for us. We, as homeowners, most people, we would like to replace our old halogen bulbs with smart LED lights. So it makes sense to do the same for our street lights. Most of our street lights, our fellow councillors would agree, are pretty useless at night time. People walking from train station to their home, they do not feel that there is enough lights on the streets that they feel safe walking home. I've read this report. There are many benefits, but one benefit I would like to add to it is it's the safety. People feel safe walking home when the streets are well lit, and the LED lights can do that for us, especially in addition to the cost savings, the power bills, everything which is mentioned in the report. I fully support it. Yes, there is a cost. Every time we replace something old with new, there is a cost. But this cost is well spent, and we are going to get the benefit over the next 8 years. So it is a smart investment to do. So I ask my fellow councillors to please support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone wish to speak against the item? Councillors will put the matter to the vote.
Motion CO 00721 has been carried unanimously, 11 in favour.
Thank you. At item 14 on tonight's agenda, motions on which previous notice has been given, there are none. At item 15, urgent business, there is no urgent business this evening. At item 16, confidential matters, can I have a mover and a seconder that the confidential item for this evening, which is CC 044 of 21, proposed sale of 21 Coulson Way, Canning Vale at lot 18, be dealt with behind closed doors in accordance with section 5.23 subsection 2 of the Local Government Act 1995. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Sabiri. And seconder was Councillor Spencer Teo. We'll put that matter to the vote. Sorry, before we put the matter to vote, Councillor Holland, do you want to ask a question?
No. I don't want to ask a question, but I don't want to speak against the motion.
Do you want to speak against the motion?
I'm speaking against the motion of going under confidentiality.
All right. I'll allow it. Go, Councillor Holland. Do you wish to speak against going under confidential?
Yes, I'd like to speak against. This is a motion to go under confidentiality, so I've got the right to speak against it.
You've been given the right to speak against it.
Sorry?
You've been given the right.
Yeah,
that's why you're speaking.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to. I can't see actually why we need to go under confidentiality for this one. I can't see why it can't be out in the open. We know what we asked for. I know everyone else will agree that it would go beyond confidentiality, but I don't see the point in this instance here at all. There's nothing that should be confidential and should not be out in the open. We've put a place up for sale. We accepted an offer. It's going to come out what the offer was, how much was there. Why is it confidential that we got an offer from company A, B and C and we accepted company B? I don't see why that should be confidential at all. One of the main reasons I got onto council initially was to make it more transparent and to not have as many items go under a confidential agreement. It was one of the huge things that I went to because I used to go to what was it called, private forums, I think they used to call it, or something like that back in the day. And it was also a thing from the Kendall report into this council was why they went to confidential or behind closed doors on so many occasions. So in this one, I have never voted against going behind closed doors before, never at this one, but I can't see the need we have to do that. So I want it on the record that I can still speak, thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Since you've spoken against it, I feel I'm compelled to speak in favour of going behind closed doors. Look, this is a sale of contract and a very large one, and it contains commercial in confidence information that should not be privy to the public, and that is why we propose to go under confidential cover. For the new councillors, what actually does happen here, you can see the recommendation on screen, or you can't at the moment, but you can see the recommendation. It's in the confidential report that has been provided to you. Once the debate is actually occurs in this chamber, once the decision is made, that full decision will be read in its entirety on the public record. We will come back from confidential cover, and then whatever the decision is, I will then read it in its totality. But until the matter has been settled, and until the contract, the council resolution here, this debate needs to be held in confidential, under confidential cover, to protect the stakeholders who are detailed ad infinitum all through the report. So that is just standard commercial practice, and I would hope to think that we're not going to break with convention this evening. So I speak in favour of it. Anyone else want to speak against going under confidential cover? No. Councillor Sabiri, you can close if you feel the need to rebut, or we can just put the matter to the vote. I'll just need you to speak. Thank you.
Happy for it to go vote, thank you.
Okay, let's just put the matter to the vote, councillors. Thank you. And that is that we move to confidential cover. Or not.
The motion to go behind closed doors has been carried, 9 in favour, with Councillor Holland and Sweeney voting against the motion.
Thank you. I thank members of the public for their attendance tonight and ask that they please leave the chambers in order for council to consider the confidential matter. Councillors, please don't leave the chamber. As soon as the chamber is cleared, we will deal with this final item on tonight's agenda. Governance, sorry about that. Can I just confirm we're back live? Thank you. I'm going to read aloud the council decision on the item which was dealt with under confidential cover. That item was CC 044 of 21, the proposed sale of 21 Coulson Way, Canning Vale, in brackets lot 18. The decision was as follows. Council resolved to 1, in accordance with section 3.583 of the Local Government Act 1995, authorises the interim CEO to provide local public notice of the proposed sale of 21 Coulson Way, Canning Vale to CPI Holdings Proprietary Limited as trading for the Coulson Unit Trust, in brackets trading as White with a YTE, White Constructions, in closed brackets, for the consideration of $1.020 million exclusive of GST, if applicable, and subject to the special conditions and requirements outlined in this report. And 2, subject to there being no objections received to Part 1, authorises the Interim Chief Executive Officer to undertake all necessary actions and sign all documentation to complete the land transaction. Should objections be received, the matter shall be referred back to the next available ordinary council meeting. 3, in accordance with section 6.8 of the Local Government Act 1995, approves a budget amendment to the 2021-22 adopted budget to allocate an expense line item of $27,500 funded from the city's land, building and development reserve for expenses related to the sale referenced in this report, with any unused funds returned to the reserve. And 4, authorises the allocation of the proceeds of sale to the Town Planning Scheme number 33 Public Open Space Trust Fund for specific use towards park improvements and or community benefits within the Canning Vale Industrial Estate. That was the decision of Council. At item 7, closure. Councillors, thank you for your attendance tonight. There being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed, the time being 8:35 p.m. Thank you.